For the past year, Black Lives Matter has been everywhere. On Facebook, Twitter, and in the news, it's been hard to ignore how racism has dominated the headlines. More people are realizing that when it comes to economic status and race, parts of America are as segregated today as they were 50 years ago. And nowhere is that segregation more obvious than in public schools. When the Supreme Court ruled on segregated schools in 1954, it said that separate facilities are unequal, and that equality in education was fundamental for any child's success. Integrated schools mean better opportunities for more kids. Studies show that low-income kids in low-income schools do badly, but low-income kids attending middle-income schools tend to do a lot better. To end segregation, school districts across the country had to bus kids to different schools to make sure they were as diverse as possible. And it worked. School integration reached its highest point in 1988, but now US schools are almost as segregated as they were in the 60s. So what happened? Wealthier parents are able to move their kids to better schools. And because poverty is often drawn along racial lines in America, better schools tend to mean whiter schools. Underfunded schools that perform badly tend to be mainly Black and Latino. Over the years, the courts have relaxed integration orders in districts across the country. This has allowed these districts to attempt to keep wealthy families from moving away by ending the busing programs, or by redistricting to carve out schools for wealthier kids. The result is more white kids attending schools with fewer Black and Latino students, and more Black and Latino students are going to schools with few or no white kids at all. In fact, the number of what some call apartheid schools, schools that are less than 1% white, has almost tripled since 1988. So why are school districts so keen to keep white kids at the cost of segregating their schools again? Well, money is a big factor. When wealthier families move away, they take their tax revenue with them. That means less tax revenue to build schools and neighborhoods. And this isn't just an issue in the South, it's across the country. The state with the most segregated schools? New York. This race and class segregation has left us with a two-tier education system, where it's almost impossible for schools in poor areas to keep up.
I feel like it's so much segregation in America's schools. It's a simple answer because it's so much segregation still in America.
Stephen Brown went to school in Florissant, Missouri, a few miles from Ferguson, where the Black Lives Matter movement grew to national prominence.
Instead of a teacher actually standing up at the board and explaining it themselves, I feel like they let the paperwork do all the work.
That's not an isolated case. As the Black population of a school rises, teachers are likely to be less experienced or qualified, and more likely to rely on less engaging teaching methods, like pre-made packets. In fact, by the time they enter the 8th grade, Black students are already 3 years behind their white peers in math and reading. And the majority of so-called dropout factory high schools are schools with mainly Black and Latino populations.
Most of the kids didn't go off to college. Most of them, some of them end up getting 9 to 5. Most of them I heard about either they locked up or they dead.
On the other side, predominantly white schools tend to isolate their students from other racial groups, which also can have a long-term effect when these kids grow up to become cops, politicians, or even teachers.
It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. say, brother, help me please.
Play sports. But for a long time, girls were not encouraged to kick, throw, run, jump, shoot, slide, or hit like boys. So why did things change? And how much have they changed? Are girls and boys treated equally when it comes to sports? To begin to answer these questions, we have to look back. In 1972, Congress passed a law called Title IX, which protected girls and women from discrimination in schools, colleges, and universities. This included discrimination in school-sponsored sports. At that time, only 15% of college athletes were women, and in high schools, only 7% of athletes were girls. Female athletes didn't get a lot of support either, and often had to provide their own uniforms and equipment. It was Title IX that forced school administrators to make sports more equal. But what does equal mean in sports? The government developed rules to measure equality under two general categories: participation and treatment. In the early days of Title IX, the number of girls playing sports was so low that it would have been very difficult for schools to suddenly provide exactly the same number of opportunities for girls and boys. Instead, the government wrote rules that gave schools 3 options, or tests, to demonstrate fairness and opportunities for girls. The 3 tests are proportionality, progress, and satisfied interests. A school can pick which test to follow. Proportionality means that girls should receive the same percentage of athletic opportunities as the percentage of girls in the student body. So if 51% of students are girls, then girls should have approximately 51% of the opportunities to play sports. The second test, progress, requires schools to make up for the days when girls had fewer opportunities by adding new sports for girls on a regular basis. The third test asks if girls' interests in athletics are satisfied. Under this test, a school must regularly ask female students what sports they are interested in, and also take into consideration the popularity of certain sports in the area where the school is located. It must then add teams according to the girls' interests. Another important part of Title IX is that it doesn't just look at how many athletic opportunities are available to each sex, but whether those opportunities are of equal quality. Specifically, Title IX requires equality between boys and girls teams for things like equipment and supplies, publicity, the scheduling of games and practice times, and the quality and number of coaches. Girls should also have equal access to locker rooms, practice spaces, and competitive facilities, as well as medical services. So if the best time to play basketball is on Friday nights because that's when most parents and fans can come, then the girls and boys teams should take turns playing on Friday nights. If boys teams play in a stadium with lights, scoreboards, and concession stands, then girls teams must have the same opportunity, either by sharing those facilities or getting their own of equal quality. But as we all know, just because a law exists doesn't mean that everybody follows it. School officials are responsible for making sure there is fairness in sports, but you can help too by keeping an eye on your own school. Look around. Are there a lot more boys than girls who play sports? Is the boys' soccer field better than the girls? Are athletic trainers available to all teams equally? Does the baseball team get new uniforms every year while the softball team gets them every 3 years? If you think there might be inequality in your schools, you can approach a school administrator, a parent, or the Office of Civil Rights, a government agency that makes sure schools comply with Title IX. Because equality is important for everyone, both on the field and